Good evening. This is the Wednesday evening of the week. And when I say the Wednesday evening of the week, of course, what I mean is that every single Wednesday, 7 p.m. Johannesburg, South African time, we get together. And I trust that by this time, we are on week 67, that you have planned or made plans that in 2023, Wednesday evenings are going to be set aside for you to grow and develop in purpose. Of course, our theme for the year 2023 is all about leadership. And on the 1st of October this year, we're going to have our first virtual MAP conference. And we'd love to invite you to join. We're going to have a number of different people speaking on topic of leadership. And I'm really looking forward to the insights that others share. But tonight I want to talk to you specifically about the word leadership. And it takes me back to the beginning of Map for Life. In 1999, I wrote down a goal. Of course, the word goal could be translated to mean objective. And there's many words that we use in our language to describe certain targets that we aim for. And I wrote down the objective to be established in 200 countries. And when I wrote that down, I thought, how can a farm boy from a poor province at the southern tip of Africa qualify to write down such a goal? And I struggled with this idea. And of course, there's been many books written on the concept of leadership. In fact, there's even degrees and postgraduate studies that one can do in leadership. I remember even contemplating doing a degree through Regent University, which was titled, or rather the degree was a Master's in Organizational Leadership. I thought that could be a great tool to have to lead. And in 2012, I'll never forget, I was preparing for the year 2013. And as I was busy writing various thoughts down, I suddenly realized that personal leadership precedes organizational leadership. And that if I could lead myself, then I automatically qualified to lead others. I was reading or listening to John Maxwell once, and of course, if you know of or have heard or have read John Maxwell's books, you know that he talks a lot about leadership. And I thought, well, maybe if I studied his books, I would be able to qualify to lead. And I remember listening to one of his talks, and he said he was asked by somebody, are leaders born? And he said, he didn't take long to answer. He said, of course, every leader is born, otherwise they wouldn't exist. But of course, the question is that, are some people born leaders and others born followers? I think, in fact, I don't just think, I believe that we are all born to lead within our purpose, to lead within our gifts and talents. And so right now, as you're listening there, if you are familiar with the world system, you will think that you need a title, you need a position, you need money, you need all kinds of things, fancy clothes, great car, live in the right part of the city on the planet to be a leader. I want to say to you tonight, you can lead where you are, because you are born to lead where you can see. And so this evening session begins with this one word, lead. To lead, you've got to be able to see. I remember as a young boy walking on the beaches, below our farm, yes, we had a beach. The ocean just 2 kilometers from where our farm was. I mean, imagine that. That's kind of living the dream. Yet while we were living the dream on this floor, on this farm with the ocean surrounded by wild game, I was still dreaming and wondering what lay beyond that horizon. I looked at that horizon every single day. I had no choice, because when we left the farm to go to school in the morning, what was in front of us but an horizon? It lay right across as far as you could see. And I used to dream and wonder what lay beyond that horizon. But when I started thinking about leadership, I realized a leader is somebody who knows where he's going. A leader is somebody who can see into the future. And when I was 11 years of age, I had the opportunity to visit the city of Cape Town. And if you're joining us this evening from somewhere else in the world, I'm sure you may have heard of the city of Cape Town. It is one of those iconic cities that people know from all over the world. And I visited the city, and there was a castle. And of course, my parents took us for a tour of the castle, and one of the attractions was the dungeon. Our panel this evening, Heather and Janine, I can just imagine them picturing themselves walking down the stairs into this dungeon where the worst kind of criminals you could think of had been kept. I mean, these were murderers and all kinds of horrible people, so they told us. You know, I think the guide just elaborated a bit or used poetic license to make the story sound 10 times worse than what they really were. But he had us convinced. I mean, we were eating out the palm of his hand. There I was, a little 11-year-old, and when he said that the worst criminal they ever had inscribed his name in his own blood in the far corner of the dungeon, I think I was the first person there. I mean, I ran to the corner to go and see exactly what this guy had done in the corner. And as I got there, along with all the other little children that were part of this guided tour, the guide switched off the light. Now, when you are in a dungeon, there are no windows. When that light went off, it was total darkness. I could see absolutely nothing. And in the crowd, there happened to be a smoker, somebody who I wouldn't necessarily run up to because of my own situation in life, but he had a lighter. And he just flicked that lighter on. And when he did, in that instant, he became the leader. He became the leader. All the kids were like a moth to a flame. I mean, they just flocked straight to the guy with the light. And that picture is something that tells me about leadership. A leader is somebody who's seen the light. A leader is somebody who is seen the vision and keeps their eye firmly fixed on that vision. And if you can do that, you have one of the most powerful attributes for leadership. So find that vision, keep your eye fixed on it, and you qualify to lead yourself. And when you qualify to lead yourself, you qualify to lead others. I remember sitting at this on our farm, on the veranda, the stoop. I'm not too sure what word you use in your country, but we were sitting outdoors. The lounge was behind. The beautiful view was in front of us. It was Christmas time. We were sitting at the table, and I remember my father sitting down next to me and placing his cold drink very firmly on the table next to me. And he said these words. He said, "Nobody's going to tell me what I can drink." And you know, in that moment, I thought to myself that, my dad is absolutely right. He is the senior person in this environment. This is his house. This is his place. He is the leader. He can do whatever he chooses. But whatever the leader does sets the example for others. And so as a leader, although you have the freedom to do whatever you choose, you have the responsibility to do the right thing, to share the right example so that those following you, and by the way, the people who are following you are the people watching you. I discovered that my children learn by what they see and not what I say, or they learn by what they see, not by what they hear. And so you can speak till you're out of breath, but your children are watching your example. And this is extremely evident when it comes to leadership. When you're the leader in whatever sphere you are, everybody is watching you. They're taking tips, they're taking cues, they're wanting to emulate you, they want to be like you. And if you have a bad example, you're going to build a team of people who perpetuate that bad example. So with leadership comes a sense of freedom, one may think, and many people would like to be leaders because they see it as a place of absolute freedom. But in truth, it's a place of responsibility where you need to rise up, stand up, set the example, set the tone. And the best way to do that is to become and continually become the better you. I think parenting is really about changing yourself. And maybe it refers to being a grandparent as well. It's just this constant, never-ending process of personal improvement so that you can be the example for those who follow. So first, have a clear vision so that you can lead, because having a vision enables you to see. Secondly, remember that leadership is about setting the example, not about telling people, not about preaching, not about talking the talk, but walking the walk. And then thirdly, I think a very important attribute of leadership is to be accepting. Now, of course, there are things that you don't accept as a leader. I'm not talking about accepting any and all ideas or behaviors, etc. What I'm talking about over here is accepting people for who they are, as opposed to judging others. There's a great parable that talks about, I say a parable, I might be wrong in using that term, but it says, before you try and remove the speck in someone else's eye, take the plank out of your own. What I've learned, being somebody who wears 4 eyes, when I look in other people's eyes, I often see something. If I look really, really closely, I see the reflection of myself in their eyes. So now when I look at that parable, I realize that the speck in the other person's eye is a reflection of the plank in mine. In other words, the problems that I see in others is a reflection on the things that I am dealing with. And if I realize that I have faults and I have things that I'm trying to overcome, that I'm struggling through, then it's important for me to realize that everyone is in a similar situation. I can't see those struggles that they're having visibly, but I can accept that there are struggles that they may be going through. And so I can be understanding of their behavior in a particular situation. Even although I might not condone it, I want to be able to treat people in such a way that they always feel open to be around or in my presence, and be accepting in that sense. I hope that I'm just triggering a thought that enables you to run with this in your own mind. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if everybody accepted you? There's something about rejection that I think is hurtful, and judgment that I spend more time judging myself. I don't need someone else to judge me as well. Okay. So if that's how I feel, then maybe I should be the same for others, to say, you know something, I've got a plank in my eye which I'm dealing with. And I know that maybe you are too. I'm going to accept that you are on a journey like I am, and I want to walk with you. I want to grow together with you. And if I can do that as a leader, I think I can help people. You know, somebody once said, if you look at people as they could be, they become who they should be. And so when I say I want to accept people as a leader, I want to look at them as in a way of acknowledging who they could be, so that they rise to that expectation. And I can do that if I accept them for who they are and recognize that they're on a journey just like me. The fourth letter, and I said to Heather earlier on this evening, I said, you know, maybe I will do this talk in two parts. It's certainly looking like that. Because I would like to have a short discussion on this afterwards. But here is an important word: discipline. Daily disciplines, daily rituals, daily habits, one could add to that. Have you ever been ill-disciplined? Have you ever been in a place where you haven't followed through on the things you said you would do? Have you ever felt maybe a little bit lazy and I'm not going to go on my walk today, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not going to do this little bit of exercise, I'll do it the next day. I'm too busy right now, I'll do it later. Have you ever been in a place where you have compromised on discipline? I think to lead requires you to demonstrate discipline. Not only discipline in the sense of being ritualistic, but maybe in the sense of being diligent. When people engage with you, do they always see consistency? Do they know that if they engage with you, there's one topic that's going to be discussed? There's only one vision. There's no distractions. I use the word distraction because I'll never forget the day I was watching the 6 o'clock news. This was some years ago, and there was an author from America. And I think for our American viewers this evening, the American members, American people have got an incredible ability to dream. And I mean, they dream big, so big that this particular author talked about a great American who once wrote that people without vision perish. And of course, that great American's name was Solomon. But I don't know if maybe he went to America on holiday for a while, but he made this statement: people without vision perish. And I read this in a different translation. And what was interesting, Zig Ziglar brought this to my attention. He said there's another translation which says, people without vision cast off all restraint. In other words, people without vision lack discipline. So discipline isn't something you kind of work at and develop. You get white knuckles, you bite your teeth, you just have to do this, you have to get through it. That's not discipline. Discipline is having a clear vision. But, you know, I had this when I started out as a young engineer, and I began to work for the city council in East London, where I grew up. He had this amazing tactic. You know, whenever I would ask to take leave, he would say, sure, no problem, you can take your annual leave, can you just make sure that that in tray of yours or that pending tray is empty? Now, what was he thinking? I mean, that pending tray had taken 3 months to build up, and he wants me to finish that in a week. Well, you know something? By some miracle, I was able to work through that pending tray and my in tray, have everything cleared in a week that I couldn't do in 3 months before. And the only reason I had the discipline to methodically and purposefully work through that was because I had a vision of being on a 2-week holiday with the family. And so vision, when you've got it, it wakes you up in the morning. It gives you a reason for living. It puts an excitement. I used to say it puts a bounce in your step. You know, you suddenly walk with purpose. You look like a man or woman on a mission. And so discipline is a natural outcome of someone with vision. When you lack vision, discipline is absent. But when you've got vision, discipline's there in bucket loads. And so I believe that your lack of discipline that you have experienced, and I'm sure you have experienced it like I have, okay? There's moments in life you just wonder where it vanished. Well, every time that has happened, it's because you or I have taken our eye off the vision. We've lost focus. We've stopped keeping the main thing the main thing. And so I just want to remind you this evening that to lead just means you need to know where you're going. To lead, you need to be an example setter. To lead, you want to be somebody that people want to follow, and people want to follow somebody who accepts them for who they are, warts and all, and say, come along, join in, let's go, let's move forward while we improve ourselves together. And then when you do that and you have that clear vision, the discipline is automatically going to be there. And I know that you are going to be able to lead yourself and as a result, qualify to lead others. Next week, we're going to continue on this theme of leadership. But right now, I'm going to invite Heather and Janine to join me. We've been spending some time together over the, let me just get rid of that little picture there. And, you know, it's just been wonderful to get to know you, Heather, and Janine. Janine actually has been traveling through to the big city of Pretoria at regular intervals. And for those of you who don't know who I'm referring to, maybe I should just pop up our names there quickly. So, you know, Janine has been coming through to Pretoria, and we've had the opportunity to spend some time chatting on Wednesday mornings. And Heather, of course, she's just next door in London. And it does feel like we're sitting right next to each other. Isn't that amazing, Heather? we seem to be so close when it comes to technology. But before I ask any questions, I thought maybe you just want to share some of your own thoughts. Perhaps one of those 4 things that I mentioned this evening on leadership just touched something on your side. Heather, anything that kind of connected with you as I was speaking this evening?
Being an example, definitely. You know, a lot of us want to lead by telling other people what to do, by telling children what to do, by telling people how they should do it. I think I agree with you. A great leader gets stuck in and does it with the person and shows them what to do as they go along. Because you have to lead from the front. You can't lead from a reclining chair. It just doesn't work.
As you were saying that, I just realized that in a sense, when you're setting the example, your silence speaks louder than words, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
What you do speaks so loudly that what you say I cannot hear. I love that example, Heather. Thanks for sharing it, Janine.
I like the accept, because I just find that if somebody accepts you where you are for who you are, you're motivated and inspired to do better. And you look, if this person can believe in me, I can. Anybody can believe in me. It's I just need to move forward, and I think it's a very beautiful leadership trait, accepting people for who they are and where they are, and believing that they can be better, which is it's amazing. Another thing is about the example. Many years ago, I did a leadership school, and the whole theme was the wolf is in the pack, and the pack is in the wolf. Um, if the wolf, is all over the place or broken, then the whole pack is going to fall apart. So the wolf has to be together.
That's something worth looking at, and maybe I'm just thinking that you need to put together a short little talk about that concept, because this kind of puts a responsibility on us to recognize that we need to be fixing our own brokenness and maybe constantly working on that. Heather, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Whilst Janine was talking, I was actually thinking of the Queen, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
how she stood firm in what she believed and stayed strong and led. And so it didn't matter what was happening around her, people started conforming because the leader is staying strong and firm in her ideas and her beliefs. So that's absolutely true, Janine. I mean, I see it like in a family. If the mother starts falling apart, everything is going haywire, and we won't even get to the dad yet. But if the mother
I
does, no, I
thought
mean,
you were going
like,
to say that the dad can fall apart and nothing happens. But if the mother falls apart,
usually, if the mother's got a whole lot of small children and she's staying firm and she's not visibly getting upset or showing how upset she is, the children behave better. But you
mm-hmm.
find like the more if a mother gets angry or upset or starts, becoming confused, the children start playing up, is the term we used. But all
Yeah.
that's happened is that the leadership is not good at that moment in time. So great idea,
we
yeah, Janine. Really
and
believe that.
we've had experiences. I think one of the things that I was writing about some time back was that when the lead when the we all have seen bad leadership traits in leaders or managers or people that we've engaged with in the past. It's easy to see those bad leadership traits, but maybe by seeing the bad leadership traits, we can actually identify the good ones that come with it. So this concept of stability is very important, and I think people love to be part, or rather be engaged with, a leader who is stable and firmly fixed on where they're headed. So I agree with this idea of stability. Heather, you were going to say
I was
10 words all at once. I could hear
I
it.
was going to ask you a question there. You're talking about bad leadership traits. Is it bad leadership traits or bad management? Are we trying to erase the boundary between leadership and management? Because you can manage very badly, but a leader cannot have bad leadership traits. You can have bad management. What do you think of the difference between leadership and management?
I haven't thought about leadership and management, because I think managers are there to control people. Leaders are there to lead them forward. So I try not talk or think about management too much. But when I say bad leadership traits, I'm thinking of maybe it's personal character traits that leaders have that may weaken their ability to lead other people.
Yes.
Um, and so if you're leading, there's always things that you're doing that are right, but not necessarily everything that you do is good for overall leadership. So yeah, so this whole thing of leadership is really, it's like parenting, because parenting is really what leadership is all about. And I think I remember when my daughter was born, um, and that sort of excitement that you have as a new parent, and then at the same time realizing that, but I've got no manual. how do I parent this child? And it was only after 20 odd years of trying to tell my children what to do that the one day I suddenly realized that they were emulating everything that I'd been doing, good things and bad things. And so parenting is more of an inside job. I've got to be changing myself and demonstrating or setting the example of what it means to be an adult. And if I do that well, then my children will do the same. And I think in leadership, it just comes down to that. It's easy to give instructions to lots of people. And if you have the title, like in the military, you have your rank. And because you have a rank, you just tell people, go this way, go that way, and they do what you tell them to do. Were those decisions good or bad? Well, that's always debatable. But when you lead without a title, I think then it requires that you have that inner stability, that you have certainty, you know where you're going. Then people will naturally follow you. You don't need any special kind of trait. Eventually they'll see, hang on, here's somebody who's going somewhere. I've spoken far too much. Janine, you look like you've got something to contribute there for sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you say, because sometimes people lead naturally and then they look behind them and they've got this whole following, and it's like, how did this happen? It's, if you lead yourself well, you're definitely going to bring other people along. But another thing that you spoke about was discipline. And, the Queen who's just passed was such an extraordinary person who lived her life with a lot of discipline and structure, and such an example. When you saw the Queen, you saw peace, but her morning routine was very rigid. Everything in her life was extremely rigid. Everything had to be exact. And
I think I've decided that at 9 o'clock every morning, I'm going to get somebody to play the bagpipes outside my window. I think that's a good. That's a good time to wake up. While we're talking about this, I've just seen Tanya from Mauritius. She's just been making a comment and talked about the idea of emotional intelligence, or EQ. Heather, you've talked about emotional intelligence in the past. What are your thoughts about that aspect in terms of leadership? We're talking about stability and so on. Where does emotional intelligence come in?
It does, because you can't keep throwing your toys out of the cot when you're leading. You can't get angry when people don't understand. You can't get upset when things are not going right. You have got to learn to control yourself first. And it comes in with that accepting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times with leaders that are seemingly not good leaders are people who do not accept themselves.
This is a very good point that you're talking about, Heather, because I was talking about accepting others, but you're quite right. I remember attending in fact, one of the courses I did in 1991 kind of set me on the path to the point where I eventually put Map for Life together. And on this course, this particular person talked about the love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, and love all mankind, or love your neighbor. But then I said, love your neighbor as yourself. And they turned it around and they said, in order for you to love others, or in order for you to accept others, you've got to accept yourself. So I think you're onto something here. That maybe the problems that we experience in leading ourselves is actually because we're struggling to accept who we are.
Yeah,
Janine?
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we don't accept ourselves, it comes across in how we lead others. And people don't, so they feel something is off, and they feel uncomfortable, and they don't feel led. If I'm making sense. So if you're not comfortable with yourself, people respond to you differently because of how you feel about yourself. And they feel they have to respond in a certain way to you. But it's not a conscious thing. It's an unaware thing. So if you've been rejected a lot and you maintain and you hang on to that rejection, people will instinctively reject you because you've actually built a wall. And it makes you less effective as a leader. I don't know if this makes sense. So it's extremely important that you need to manage yourself. And and the thing is, as a leader, we can also be wrong, right? And we need to
Yeah.
own that.
Yeah, that's where I was
When
coming
you're
from.
wrong,
Like
you need to own
standard.
it. You need to say,
Yeah.
okay, I was wrong and you were right. And
But what if
I
what
can
if what if
undo it.
leadership is actually, while you've been talking, I'm just thinking of an incredible trait that Anne has, and that is the ability to listen. Uh, Listen not just with their eyes or ears, but listen with their entire being. Not only hear what you say, know what you mean, and all these things. And I wonder if that's not a very powerful leadership trait, the ability to listen as opposed to be the one speaking. Heather?
Oh yes, definitely. You've got to be able to listen. Um, somebody, some book I read said something about Nelson Mandela and how
Yeah.
his father used to go to these meetings with the chiefs and kind of like listen to everybody else first before they spoke. And I think that is listening is just so important because people then put all their faith and trust in you and they know that they're being heard and then they'll listen to you after they've had their say. So I think that's a brilliant idea. You've got to be able to listen.
When I put Map for Life together, I asked a number of people to contribute uh, because I felt I had nothing to give. all I could do was put together a manual, and I mean, who am I to write anything about success? Because I felt at the time that was the furthest that was so far in the future because of the way my thinking was of success at the time. And so I asked all these successful people, and one of them was Raymond Ackerman. Now, for those people who are not familiar with South Africa, he started a big supermarket chain when he was 32 years of age. He's still alive. I think he's the same age as, in fact, I think he's 96 right now. And Raymond Ackerman responded when I asked for these 10 points. And you know what he said? He said, let the grasshoppers jump in. And he was referring to listening, but not listening to the senior people in the organization. He talked about walking the shop floor and listening to the person who was keeping the floor clean, listening to the person who was packing the vegetables in the vegetable section, and listening to them, because from listening, he got great ideas on how to improve his business. And so maybe we should be listening a lot more attentively to the people that we sometimes overlook or don't feel can make a contribution. Janine?
Yeah, listening is definitely a superpower, and you will be surprised at what people can bring to the table. Um, I have a habit of having a chat with people, even street people, just to get an understanding of who they are and what they're about. And I've learned some extraordinary lessons from people that you would think have nothing to teach. Sometimes people find themselves in a place where it's not perfect, but their wisdom is extraordinary. You know, sometimes it takes a fall to give you the wisdom you needed all along. You know, so there's a lot of wisdom. Another thing about listening is, you know, a lot of people are in sales and wanting to grow businesses or express or take things forward, right? And if you listen, you can get to know what the client's problem is, or the person you're trying to, because, or their objection. Because if we take Map for Life as an example, you know, if you really listen to a person, you'll understand why they haven't started following a dream, why they haven't moved forward. And then you can answer their real question and not just tell them the story and they like drift, because you're not hearing their real issue. And it might be something simple like, I don't know what my dream is. And then you can advise them and give them direction on what their real issue is.
I hear what you're saying, that maybe in terms of our training or coaching other people, we should be practicing our listening skill more than our ability to speak. And somebody said, Heather, you will be able to help me. How do you spell silent and listen? What is the difference between the spelling of you might have to write it down on a piece of paper, silent and listen. I seem to recall there was some connection between these two. Silent and listen. Isn't there something with the words jumbled or something, or the letters jumbled around with those two words?
They both.
Sorry?
They both have the same letters.
Yeah.
Both got the same letters.
They're just in different order.
Yeah, so I think there's some sort of value in understanding that maybe silence is powerful. There was a thought that I had while the two of you were talking just a moment ago, and that is that sometimes we might be confusing leadership with bossiness. In other words, our impression of what a leader is may be the image that we have of politicians, because politicians are in a so-called self-acclaimed position of leadership, and we look at that and we draw our inspiration of what leadership is by looking at a politician. Or maybe we're in the workspace and we have somebody who's appointed a manager or the CEO of the company. That becomes our idea of leadership. Or maybe in the church, there's somebody who started a church and is now the pastor because that's what they started. And now we see them as our definition of what leadership is about. Do we have, maybe, are there other ways of defining a leader? What is the question I'm looking for? I'm just going to open you guys can share your thoughts on what I've just been thinking about myself. Go ahead.
Well, sometimes leaders are appointed. Sometimes they are
self-appointed. Appointed or anointed, that's what we're talking about.
So,
yes.
But there are times when you have to appoint yourself a leader if nobody is taking the role. If you're you know,
step up to the plate. Is that what
absolutely.
You're saying?
If you're all like they have these live programs these days where they're going to drop people on an island or in the bush, and they wait to see who's going to emerge as a leader. Sometimes you have to appoint yourself because nobody is doing anything, and you've got a vision of maybe where you should be going. Sometimes when you look in the playground, you can see who the leaders are. So sometimes leadership is natural. There are people who stand up, and there are other people who hide and say, "Oh, I hope they don't notice me," you know, because they don't want to be accountable. They don't want to be lead, because part of leadership is being accountable.
So maybe you're touching on another trait that we need to develop. I was going to say self-confidence, but that comes back to that whole idea of accepting yourself. You know, and I saw Mgwadi from my hometown in East London talking about the idea of forgiveness and being able to forgive yourself relating to mistakes that you've made, and maybe the self-confidence or the good self-image and those kind of things, and the assertiveness and all that comes in a confidence in knowing who you are, and maybe being able to forgive yourself for some of the mistakes that you've made.
Yeah, accepting yourself as you are with all your warts and all is very powerful, because people can relax around you and feel safe around you. And that's the perfect leader. Because what I see a leader is somebody who makes the person or the group that they're with better than they were before.
Okay,
Because
that's
even
a very good statement.
yeah, because if even if you're doing a task, the group together becomes better because they achieve something together.
You know what I just want to write this and put it on the screen. Just a thought inspired by what you said. It's not exactly what you said, but I just wrote there: a leader brings out the best in you, and maybe we should actually start thinking about that from a personal perspective. Who brings out the best in me? Who brings out the best in you? And maybe for our viewers to start thinking about that, because maybe the people who bring out the best in you are actually silently leading you without you realizing it. They are your mentors. They are in fact influencing you, therefore are playing a leadership role of some kind. Heather, you were talking about the schoolyard or the playing field and seeing the people, and I think there's lots of interesting traits that you see, like you mentioned a couple of the person who sits in the corner, the person who carries on doing their own thing, the one who's telling everyone else what to do or bossing people around, the one who's got something of interest and everybody's following them off to go and do something naughty perhaps. So there's all these different kinds of influences happen. I think what I find fascinating is that you will see somebody leading in something incredibly well, like on the sports field. But when it comes into another environment, they really struggle. So it seems like we maybe are naturally able to lead in the things that we are naturally good at. What do you think about that?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm. You sound like
Simply,
a South African, because here we have that in our language. We say ja, nee, or yes, no.
in most
Yes, I
cases,
don't
in most cases, yes, but usually, especially probably in the school environment, those that are leading on the field do lead off the field, but maybe not in good ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are in awe of them and want to be like them and want to emulate them when they're on the sports field. When they start doing things that are not actually right or correct or honest off the field, they've still got a following.
You're touching on something really important here, and that is that
Influence.
when you've been given a platform, you end up. I think you're talking to some extent. If we take it to the next extreme, you're talking about celebrities or people who've been given celebrity status. In other words, we have put them on a pedestal, or we've placed them on a platform. We've put them on a pedestal, so they now have a platform. And if they don't realize that their example is part of leading, the example that they set could be misleading people. And I think of some of these really great music artists. Artists. One that comes to mind is our friend Lady Gaga. She comes out with an incredibly powerful song. I was born this way. We may have lost Janine because in Johannesburg, South Africa, they're testing the power. Welcome back, Janine. So she sings a song, Born This Way, and then there's all kinds of color parades happening in London and around the world. We've got somebody who's leading or maybe misleading. And I think of people, gangs, for example, in the city of Cape Town, which we talked about, and maybe the city of New York and different big cities around the world. You have gang leaders. So they have influence, they're leading people, but not necessarily leading people in the way that is good for society or good for others. Janine, you're looking like you've got some experience in this area. Are you a past gang leader?
No, not quite. But the thing is, it's with leading. If you're misleading people, you just got to remember you've got to take accountability for the results as the leader. But those guys are extraordinary leaders. I mean, people will die for them. So they have the gift and they have the ability to lead. Imagine if that could be channeled into something beautiful.
But Janine, do you think that they are leading, that they are good leaders, or is it that 90% of the people don't believe that they can lead themselves, so they've got to follow someone? Is it that desire to be part of a group that makes these other people look like they're good leaders, or should we inspire everyone to first lead themselves?
Look, let's put it this way. My view is that they are strong leaders, but they are misled themselves. And to be a good leader, because remember, they have to give an account for what they do, and they will take responsibility at some point for the lives that they have shattered. But you can learn from them. They know exactly what they're doing.
I think it's becoming evident to me that leadership is a really big subject, and that there's a need for us to really delve into it. And I'm excited that for the year 2023, that this is going to be our theme. Our theme is going to be leadership. And just listening to the input this evening, and thank you so much for those who are posting online. And Tanya, so nice to have you joining us every week as you post your comments. I'm just looking forward. There's a block missing on the screen. If you take a look carefully from Mauritius, you will see there's a space there for you. So I'm hoping that next week or in the near future, you will join us. We'd love to hear you share your thoughts in person, because you've got such good ideas coming up there. I just think there's so much to explore. And when you've been sharing, and I'm reading some of the comments over here, I'm just thinking how, again, I'm reminded of how vast the unknown is. There's so many things that I wish I knew about leadership that I can still learn. But at the same time, just tying back to the theme of this evening's message, is that if I take my eye off the things that I don't have or the things that I don't know, and just look at what I do have and what I do know, and I begin to work with those and develop them, I think in that process, I'm going to become a better person. We haven't even touched on things like values. I think what you were talking about earlier this evening is wrong values produce wrong leadership, perhaps. But that's just our opinion. Of course, if you're a gang member, you might have a different opinion of what it means to be a leader. But clearly, there are many different kinds of leaders in the world, in different spheres, and each of those spheres that people operate in maybe require different kind of traits, and some traits that are common. And perhaps in the year ahead, we can begin to discuss and seek some of these common things. So just to wrap up this evening, each of you just to maybe share a closing statement. And let's not close. We're not going to close the subject, because this subject has just been opened now. And I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight, because I'm going to be thinking about all the things that you've shared. And I'm sure those of you who are listening to this recording are going to do the same. Heather, you can start, since you look like you've got so much to say. I can see it.
Just lead by what you do.
I love that. Walk the walk.
Absolutely.
Don't preach the sermons. Yes, Janine.
Yeah, inspire others and don't mislead them, because you will have to give an account. That I think that's a summary. Because the truth is, if you've got the ability to lead, you can convince people to do anything. And sometimes you only discover later what you've established in them, and then you have to patch up what you've done.
I'm hearing a new subject coming up for a next occasion, and it's manipulative leadership. So I think there's lots of people over there trying to apply Dale Carnegie's theories for their own gain and benefit. And maybe we can talk about that at some point as well. But thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you to those of you who are watching this recording. If you've not subscribed to the Map for Life channel, please do so, because if you do, every live stream with these lovely people that you see on screen and many more is going to be, you'll receive the notification and you'll be able to join us. And we're looking forward to building a global network of leaders. And so we need to learn how to be effective in leadership. And maybe you have the secret to share with us. So have a wonderful week ahead. Look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday. Heather, Janine, thank you so much for participating. This is exciting stuff. I can't wait to pick your brains more. Have a wonderful week. And we'll close out with a short little video. Cheers. Bye-bye.